Hi everyone. I just completed one of the biggest academic journeys I've had in my lifetime, passing all of the CFA exams on the first attempt. And during my journey, I've done a lot of research into who was going to help me and who were the best people to reach out to in terms of getting me over that finish line. And the best person that I met and worked with is Daren Miller. And he's lucky enough he's with us tonight. So hi Daren, thanks for being here.
I am fortunate to be here. Luke, thank you very much for having me, and huge congratulations on your CFA success and passing all of the exams. So you've got plenty of time now in the evenings, on the weekends, to do other things apart from studying. Yeah. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. And obviously this is your YouTube channel, and thank you for inviting me on. But I'd like to turn the tables on you here a little bit and do asking you some questions so that people can shed some light on your thinking. So one of the first questions I've got for you is, why did you choose to do the CFA program in the first place? What motivated you for that?
I've taken a lot of little courses on just trading strategies and how the markets work and stuff like that. But during my work, everyone talked about how great the CFA program was. Everyone said how it's such an all-encompassing, amazing program, and it's something that if you really are interested in finance, you should take. So
let's go back to your university years. So tell me about those. What were you studying at university? Where were you studying? And did that sort of get you interested in the CFA program in terms of making that next step?
I took economics as an undergrad, and I took a business minor, which is really just not a very deep dive into business. It just had a couple different finance courses, a marketing course, a business law course.
Did you know about the CFA program then?
I heard about it. It is something that you hear. It's not something that I was even considering taking at that point. It was just something I kind of heard in passing. And to be honest, I thought it was just a very elitist type of designation.
Interesting. Well, that was one of my motivations for doing it. I just thought there were so few people that have it, and how cool would it be to go down that road?
Right.
And I know that you actively invest. I mean, we're talking about a covered call strategy that you would have thought of, that you would engage at a certain stage. When did you start investing on your own? Was that well before the CFA program?
Yeah, that was well before.
Wow.
I feel like the first time I traded a stock was maybe grade 10.
Fantastic, wow.
Early high school days.
Yeah.
And it just came from a person that gave me a tip. And they said, this is a great stock, you should buy this. And I said, okay, I've never bought a stock before, but I think my dad has a brokerage account, so I'll just ask him to buy the stock for me.
And that's important to pick up on, Luke. I know that you come from a family with a very strong work ethic, from a Slovak background. So you saw your dad, for example, investing from a young age, and you felt maybe that was something for you as well. So
yeah, my dad would talk about stocks and just getting involved in real estate and stuff like that.
Cool.
And, it seemed like a very exciting thing. It seemed just something that was very dynamic, allowed you to really be creative as well as use the full capacity of your mind to problem solve and figure things out. And like I said, the psychological aspect of it too, I've always been interested in, and I feel like the markets are really they show you how people act, the human nature. And it's a very raw form. It's not sugar coated. It's not advertising.
Well, obviously there's the theoretical aspects to finance, and then you blend in psychology, and then you've got the modern discipline, obviously, behavioral finance that comes from it. So let's rewind the clock a little bit, and for you, that's not too long ago.
Yeah.
Let's think about level one. So how did it feel when you register for level one, and all of a sudden, now that you're studying on your own, and this goes from university where there's a structure now to self-study. So what was that like for you?
So that was a tough transition, definitely. It definitely had been a few years since I'd been in university. I was working for 4 years or so after university before I decided to start the CFA program. And it was one of those things where I was like, man, I have to have a full shift in mind state here. Because, I was coming from a situation where I hadn't studied for 4 years. I was just working and doing everything else in life, and then I was like, well, I'm going to get back into this, and I have to be just putting everything into this, otherwise I'm not going to get through it.
So I get it at that stage. You mentioned the word elitist earlier, but I guess at that stage you're thinking, holy cow, what have I taken on here?
Exactly.
In that way. Now, did you study purely from the curriculum, or did you use a blend of curriculum and prep notes?
Yeah, I used the curriculum and Schweizer notes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so how are you balancing the two off of each other?
Well, what I would do is I would actually read the curriculum first.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's sort of the different way around from how other people do it, but that's cool.
At the beginning, I say in level 1, I started reading the Swizer notes first, and then kind of going back and forth between the two. But as I got into a momentum with it, I actually started reading the CFA notes or the CFA curriculum books first, because they give you, I found that they give you a lot of context, and I wanted that context. But then a lot of times after you're reading it, you're not really understanding what the point of it is. At the end of the day, you're like, what do I need to take into the exam for this?
Yeah. At the end of the day, you do need to pass an exam. I mean, it's nice to know sort of academically about this stuff, but practically, you do have to get past. You do have to pass an exam. So, tell me about your first CFA exam. Then you wrote it here in Calgary at the Genesis Center, I take it.
Yep. At the Genesis Center.
And what was it like writing an exam with 1,500 other people?
You prepped me a lot for exam day. I think that a lot of your advice kind of came into play, and the way that you kind of expressed it, I feel like I was really prepared for the environment there. And actually, the level 1 exam was a very pleasant experience for me.
Wow, that's amazing if you can say that, because we know that so many people, some people actually panic that day, being around so many other people, and you can sort of feel the tension at the exam center.
Yeah.
And let's go back then to getting your exam results for level 1. How did that feel?
It felt amazing. It felt really good.
And I take it you probably were the one that as soon as you get your exam results, like, yeah, I'm signing up to level 2 right now.
I took a trip after the exam.
Oh, cool.
For like 2 months, and I told myself that I wasn't going to actually look at the email until I got back. I started researching online, like what are signs to say that you passed, and then there's that little rumor that's circling around that if the start of the email, if there's a C at the beginning, it means that you passed, right? And there was a C, so I was like, well, at this point, I think that it's a good.
So, what were you just opening the window a tiny amount just to see?
Well, no, because Gmail, the way that Gmail works is like I don't think it does this anymore, but it gives you like the first like couple letters of the actual email.
Well, I like that story very much, because I think that there's a lot of people after they finish the exam, then they go back into the routine of work and everything like that. You have to remember that that's a huge thing that you've just taken on, to study independently all that time, and then to go in and celebrate and to explore. I think that was a perfect thing to do. That sounds really cool. Tell me about the step up into level 2. Like, how did you deal with that? Because that to me is the most critical part of the CFA journey, is moving from level 1 to level 2. I think a lot of people get lost on that, and I think that's where a lot of people give up.
Yeah, the momentum that I started with level 1 really carried me through a lot there. I think based on the fact that I put myself so into studying for level 1, and a lot of actually your advice came into play in terms of the calculator habits, the just the general momentum that you have to have. I remember you talking about, for instance, like hypothesis testing and how it's such a small thing at level 1 and people don't read it, but it actually comes into play a lot with level 2. I went into everything with level 1. I read it really well, and I feel like that momentum itself carried me through a lot of level 2, because you're right. When I started opening the books with level 2 and reading it and stuff, it was like hitting you like a train a little bit, because not only is it harder material, it seems like it's a little less organized. Like level 1 is so cut and dry in terms of little categories and stuff, but level 2 you're reading the curriculum and it's like they're putting so much stuff together.
Well, I remember you from level 2, and I remember close to the end of our prep courses, and I remember you had some questions. Like, you're a machine when it comes to actually getting in there and seeing that stuff. Like, for me, teaching someone like you, it seems like there's no stone that you've left unturned. Like you've gone into everything, or almost everything at level 2, which I find is rare as well. There's a lot of people that will say, portfolio management, that's too difficult. I'm not going to touch those readings. Highly theoretical. And there's other people, you mentioned about the hypothesis testing. There are people like, I won't even do level 2 quants. Yet you've done them all, which I think is a really good way to nice insurance policy for the exam, but also I think that's like a level of detail I think that you would expect of people.
I feel that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think that when you see it sometimes just an exam, you can shortchange yourself of an absolutely amazing experience for the rest of your life.
I mean, the way that I took the exam itself, I was interested in the material. I heard this was a great thing to do, and I did it for the sake of like enriching my knowledge base. And I hear people, the way they talk about the CFA exams, how they're just like essentially trying to figure out how to pass the exam.
Yeah, they're looking for the CFA hack.
The CFA hacks, yeah, and they're just going into all these little tricks and stuff. And I sit there, I'm like, well, what's the point of even doing that?
I think there are easier CFA letters to get, like the Cat Fanciers
Yes.
Association letters.
I feel if you want to pull some tricks, you should get that.
Yeah,
designation
totally.
instead.
The morning session of level 3, tell me about that. Because again, once you're past level 2, then the next sort of hurdle to get through is
Right.
answering those morning questions.
Right. I did find the actual exam writing experience pretty intense. I would say that out of all the exam writing experiences that I had with the CFA program, the morning of the level 3 was definitely the most intense for me. I think my penmanship in general is pretty terrible, and I think that really came into play on writing the morning session, because I was sitting there and it was stressful and my arm was shaking and I was trying to control it, and I was erasing and I was shaking the table, and I was thinking like, man, the guy beside me must be really angry at me right now. I actually apologized to him in the evening,
nice,
in the afternoon, because I was like, sorry man, I was shaking the table.
Wow, the gentleman's CFA candidate. Amazing, Luke. So that is a place, obviously, where people do get hung up. But again, it just demonstrates, Luke, that you don't need that perfection. You just need enough to pass the exam.
Right. Yeah. I think after the morning session, I felt like, man, that must have been terrible. Like I feel like people wouldn't even be able to read what I wrote. And I actually had some friends that were saying the same thing. And I studied with some really smart people too. That were really.
Totally.
But I had, like, for instance, this one colleague that I studied with he was a machine as well. And I was almost like, he was inspiring me, and I was comparing myself to him. And afterwards, after the morning session, when he was saying that he's convinced that he didn't pass that, I'm like, dude, like, there's no way. There's no way.
Well, it's interesting. That's worth touching upon as well. So here's someone like you that has obviously that very driven mindset. I mean, it comes from your family, for example. You've been around it your entire life. So doubts creep in, even for someone like you.
Yeah. A common trend that I've seen among like myself and a lot of other people, and I think even you've told me stories along similar lines, is that people that really want to that knowledge and really want to pass and really want just the academic richness of it, they have these doubts because there's the uncertainty. The exam causes a lot of uncertainty.
Well, life causes a lot of uncertainty, and I really
yeah.
think that the CFA exam is a great metaphor for life.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen even when you leave the exam center.
Right.
I think that it's really important to say that to people. Again, you've been successful with the CFA program at level 1, level 2, level 3. There'll be people out there that are thinking, I can't do that. That's not going to be me.
Yeah.
There must have been times when you were thinking, that's not going to be me. Or was it like, when you had those moments of doubt, how would you channel them into, it is going to be me?
It's a good question. I think a lot of my mindset was, especially with level 2, because I remember just you talking about how much harder it is and how there's like a merry-go-round of people that are coming in.
Yes, you used my merry-go-round word, yeah.
Yeah, that really stuck in my mind when you said that, the idea of like the level 2 merry-go-round. And I remember after getting through level 1, I remember saying to myself, I'm not going to be stuck on that merry-go-round. And that was the situation that like I felt like whenever there was like a doubt in my mind, I would just make sure, like whenever I read something that wasn't clear to me, I mean, obviously there's a time constraint that comes along with it, but I felt like I just kind of went into like to the point where I said, like, I don't understand this, so I'm just going to investigate until I understand it, until I feel like I have a general idea of how everything connects together.
And again, you're not looking for the hack. You're not looking for the hack at that stage. You're looking for true understanding.
Yeah, like I actually wanted to understand what they were talking about, and that was driven because I wanted to pass the exams, and I didn't want to be on that merry-go-round, and also because I genuinely wanted to learn what they were teaching, because I think it's useful knowledge, and that's the reason I did the program in the first place.
Well, again, for me, that's why I did the program as well. I knew nothing about investing. No one in my family ever invested. There was no money left over to actually save.
Wow,
so
okay.
It was like, how am I going to find out about this and do it? And it took me several years after finishing the CFA program before I ever invested my first penny.
Wow.
Believe it or not.
Really?
So so you've sort of done it the other way and gone into it thinking, gosh, I've been investing this way, or at least now I've got some better tools to be able to figure this out.
Yeah,
So now let's talk about getting the final results and getting the final C letter that begins with that letter. How did that feel?
I would express it as like a 2-week process after getting the exam result. Initially, I was super ecstatic. I just remember getting it like right at 6 a.m. And then as soon as I opened it and I got that passing, it was one of those things where it's kind of surreal, I feel, in a lot of ways, because this is something that for the last 3 years I've just put into like so much of me into it. My life's been circling around it. And to have that kind of thing that we're saying, okay, you did it, like you made it, like you're at the finish line now, you're done. You know, it's a very surreal feeling.
Does it almost seem unbelievable? Does it seem like, oh my gosh, it's over, I don't have to study anymore?
A little bit, yeah. I was excited and I was happy, but I remember it not really clicking in until like even like a week later. I remember a week later I started to get kind of more emotional about it and to realize like, wow, like I actually like I don't have to do this again this year.
Speaking of setting out doing something, now that you're done, what's on your radar screen now?
Well, that's a good question. I think, I'm looking at different types of finance jobs. I kind of want to narrow in the elements of what I really enjoyed about the material.
Just to stop right there for a moment, you're in a job right now that really doesn't relate to the CFA program. Yeah. Like you've done all this work. There is no direct correlation between your work and having the CFA designation. Yeah. Most people around you will not have that, and that's probably a reflection, obviously, what's going on in Calgary at the moment with the continued downturn from oil and gas.
Yeah.
But what is it that interests you in terms of taking that designation and maybe using it in a traditional portfolio management setting or an analytical setting? Which path sort of has the greatest appeal for you?
I like the more analytical side of it, and I think that's just because my work experience so far has been very relationship management based. Yeah. And I want to have that balance. I really like interacting with people. I think at this point I want to take all the analytical stuff that I got from the CFA program and experience it in the real world. So I'm definitely leaning towards more of the analytical side, and then maybe down the road I might have more of a relationship management, maybe more of a balance. But I think having some analytical experience to tie to my resume would really help things.
Well, speaking of resumes, that to me, for somebody that has been out of I haven't applied for a job since 2001, and the concept of having to put these days, submitting a resume online or whatever, I mean, you risk having these read by robots and key scan words and things like that. How do you deal with something like that? I mean, when you're thinking of sending a resume in for a job, I mean, you're probably doing it with 500 or 600 other people. And how does that feel?
Doesn't feel good.
No, it doesn't. I'm sure it doesn't. So what are you doing to network and to get out there and to push your name out? Because I really do think that's how I would do it.
Yeah.
If I was looking to move on. Like there is no way I'd put my resume. Well, I put my resume somewhere, and I probably put in some hidden profanities so that the computer, it just flags like you've got to stand out somehow.
It's a good tip. I might try that.
It is a good tip. What's your greatest weakness? I work too hard. Like I've got the interview questions already sorted out. Like that one's not going to work. But what is it that you really are different in that regard? Like you really do have that really strong analytical side, and you really do have that really strong relationship side. Like people do want to be around you and are comfortable around you. And I think that you need to show people that you're just not going to be pigeonholed somewhere else. Because where you're working right now, I mean, it's a huge organization. It's so easy to get pigeonholed, and a lot of people never escape that.
Yeah. That's true, and I think I'm starting to see this as like a level 4, the art of networking, right?
Yeah.
And I think I'm making.
You've given me a good idea for a class.
There we go. I think you should start that class.
Level 4 networking, yes.
Very valuable. Level 4 networking, because I really think there is an art to it, and it is something that To be honest with you, like I've been at my current company for over 6 years, probably closer to 7 years, and. I didn't have to apply to really any jobs while I was there. Like I just got promoted, and so really this whole process to me is a bit foreign in the sense of I haven't done it in a while. So I think that there's a lot to be learned that I'm still learning about it, and it's one of those things where you wake up every day and as you go about your day, I think every opportunity that you get that comes in front of you, you have to see it as something that. It's kind of been given to you, and you got to take advantage of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So now, how are you using that mindset, for example? So, in terms of focusing on a goal, finishing the CFA program is like the goal's already set for you. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
It's set for everyone.
Right.
What are you doing now to
Yeah.
change from that and like visualizing what that next goal is going to be? I have a feeling, speaking with you, you're still a little bit uncertain about what that's going to look like.
And it is, because I have a lot of internal ideas about what I want, and you have to match it up with the external environment. I think that is the biggest dissonance that I have, is that, you know, I see the elements of the things that I really enjoyed with the CFA program. I see the elements of things that I really enjoy in my career, and what I want to, like, how I want to grow internally and how I want to grow as a person. And now I'm like, okay, well, how do I go out and match that to what's externally happening around me? And I think that to me is right now is the most challenging part.
Well, I guess in Calgary it could be a little bit of a challenge, but maybe casting your net a little bit wider. That could be one way of doing it. 'Cause I think it's you know, to take again some of your previous YouTube videos is all about that. The visualization, thinking about what that outcome is going to be, and working to get that outcome, and having the belief that you're going to that you're eventually going to get there, no matter what.
Exactly.
And I think that that's really important. So, do you feel any sort of like, okay, I'm in this situation. This is where I work. I've got the CFA designation. It's like, what WTF? Like, how does this work? Like, do you have days where you're just thinking, it's not a matter, it's not worth it, but like. Man, oh man, like this is not right. I mean, do you have days like that where it's like, I am so overqualified for what I'm doing, I am capable of so much more, I just don't have it right now?
Yes, definitely. I'd say that's a pretty common thing.
Yeah, and I think it's a fairly common thing with a lot of people that start with the CFA program. So I started the CFA program in the industry on the buy side, in a job that exactly matched up most of the way with the CFA program, colleagues as well that had it too. This is a little bit different, I think, for a lot of people these days. So Luke, the experience that you're going through, I think, is probably more common than the other way around, where people are already in the job and they just get the CFA designation and just continue on.
It's a very interesting dynamic, and it's something that I to be honest, I didn't even account for when I was doing the CFA program.
Interesting.
I didn't even think about that. It's one of those things that I think it's interesting, because I find the way that a lot of people in the general finance industry, or maybe not even the finance industry, but the banking industry, or like the general industry that revolves around money, people that don't have the CFA, there is that kind of almost elitist idea of it that I feel like I had, and it sounds like you had originally too, where they're like, you have your CFA, you can do whatever you want now. You know, like you have the golden ticket. And it's something that when I was working towards the CFA, I always just thought that. And
did you think that there'd be like a light that comes down from the sky or something like that? Like the CFA scroll has been delivered to you. Here's Luke, I've got it. Where are all the jobs? Like, did you have that sort of vision? I
think it was definitely. I don't want to say it was like cut and dry exactly like that, but I think it was definitely somewhere along those lines of thinking like, well, after I get this, the kind of world's your oyster. You can do whatever you want. I mean, not whatever you want, but you are going to get attention from a lot of different places that you normally wouldn't. And that's definitely something that's not necessarily true, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think, again, that's a very valuable lesson for people. There's got to be a realistic outcome of once you've gotten the CFA designation, that keep that excitement going rather than turning it into what I say is like a disappointment. There are a lot of people that think, why on earth did I do this? But I think that just underscores the need to continue along that hustle. Looking back, do you think it may have been helpful if you had been visualizing and channeling yourself all along to be pivoting more into that desired career from an earlier stage?
I agree, definitely. That definitely would have. In hindsight, that's what I would have done.
The hindsight bias coming through.
The hindsight bias is coming. It's good to recognize it. But I think that in itself was definitely something that if I were to look back on, I would say like that's something that I could have done a little bit better.
So even though the job search is challenging and you don't get that automatic job, what advice would you give for people right now that, put yourself back into those shoes, that you want to do the CFA program, that you're not exactly even certain about the sort of career that you want? Would you recommend for people to do it that way, the way that you've done it?
I'd say if you enjoy the material and you like what you're learning, then yes. I think if you're going to just have a situation where you're like people talk so highly about the CFA, it sounds like a golden ticket. I'm just going to do it for that purpose. I think I would say don't do that.
Yeah.
I'd say that you could put your energies into better activities.
What other sort of activities do you think these days that people would get into?
I mean, I'd say networking, right? Like, I mean, that in itself, I could say, you know, if you don't know what you're doing and if you have an idea, just maybe an idea of doing that, like you should go out and network and try to have coffee with people and job shadow people and see how much exposure you can get to it and then decide and go from there, right? Because the CFA itself, it's great. It's a huge commitment though.
Yeah.
You know, it's 3 years. It's one of those things that you either are trying to look for tricks and then you somehow get lucky and get through, or you do it properly and then you're spending a lot of your time.
Yeah.
You know, that's where a lot of your energy is going.
And again, looking back on it, I mean, there are so many people that try to find those hacks, those shortcuts. I've seen it so many times, and I was tempted to do it myself. And of course, you can't study everything. You can't remember everything for the exam. And my view is, you might as well go to this exam being so over-prepared that you're going to have the best chance, so that you don't have to come back and do it again.
Exactly, and that's exactly what my mindset was. And I think I remember in your courses that's kind of what you were expressing, and I really picked up on that because I think at the beginning of the journey I was really trying to figure out like how do you get through this? What's the right mindset to have in terms of like basing your study habits and kind of thinking about the program in itself. And I find like that's something that I really picked up from you that I thought was really valuable in the early stages of working with you, was you really were emphasizing the right mindset to have and the right ideas to have around approaching the CFA program. And I think, you know, I don't know how much of the other classmates got that element of it, but I sure did, and I think it was very valuable.
Well, thank you. And I think that creates what I call the whole candidate, rather than that machine that goes into the exam chasing after the cat fanciers. The Chartered Financial Analyst designation. You and I are CFA aficionados in that regard. Luke, thank you very much. Congratulations at passing the CFA program, and thank you, more importantly, for trusting me to help you with your CFA journey. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And thank you so much for all your inspiration and all the value that you've added to my journey. You've done a lot of, you've taught me a lot of things in terms of the mindset as well as the material, so I really appreciate that.
Well, likewise, it goes both ways, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome.